The Unfiltered by Jade.
Jade. Welcome to the Unfiltered by Jade, where we get out of the box and dive into topics that are sidelined. I look forward to entertain, educate, and inspire. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, donate, and make everybody know about this.
Beats by RB Records, a proud sponsor of The Unfiltered by Jade.
Shopping Assistance Jamaica takes the stress away. Our services include online and local shopping in Jamaica for individuals and businesses, personal shopping, purchasing of company and office supplies, importing and exporting small packages across Jamaica and worldwide, helping you to find unique gifts and items for all events and occasions. Contact us at 876-919-5195. Shopping Assistance 2015 at gmail.com. Follow Shopping Assistance on Instagram at Shopping Assist JA, at Twitter at Shopping Assist 5, and Facebook at The Shopping Assistance. Shopping Assistance, your style, your budget. Welcome back to the Unfiltered by Jade. Today we have with us James Geering. He is the host and CEO at Behind the Shield podcast. Now, why I got fascinated is because you don't normally hear people talking about persons behind the shield or persons wearing the badge. So that's why he caught my attention. He is a retired firefighter and paramedic. So I want us to welcome James Geering. How are you? And welcome to the Unfiltered by Jade.
Thank you very much, Jade. I appreciate it. I'm doing very well. How are you doing?
I am doing great, and I'm happy to have you here.
So I got a question for you first. Where on planet Earth are you sitting right now?
I'm sitting in, I am in Atlanta.
Okay, because I guess from the accent and even some of your guests, I heard a lot of the kind of island accents. So I wasn't sure if you were based there or not.
I am from Jamaica.
Okay, there we go.
But I live in Atlanta.
Beautiful.
Yes, that's where my accent comes from. All right, so we're going to jump into it because I'm excited to hear about you and about, some of the topics that you speak about. So I want to know first and foremost, why do you think it's important to highlight persons who wear badges?
So I'll give you a little backstory on why I started the podcast, and it will probably kind of help explain that. Sure. I'm originally from England, but I became a firefighter paramedic when I got to the US. And about 10 years into my career, I started seeing first responders suffering from mental health issues, from physical health issues, and went to 6 funerals in 2 years.
Wow.
And so I realized, and the irony is that at the same time, as a responder, you get to see kind of behind the curtain, as it were, with society. So you get to see what truly works, whether it's, the health of the nation, whether it's behind some of the violence that we see on the streets. And so I wanted to find the experts. I'm not an expert. I'm just a regular bloke. But I knew that there were a lot of great minds out there. So I wanted to connect them with the people that wore the badge, the people that were in the community, and just try and bring some solutions to some of the problems, because doing the same thing expecting different results is insanity, as the phrase goes. And that's what I was seeing, whether it was the addiction epidemic, some of the violence, obesity, all these things that sadly the men and women were ending up in the back of our ambulances, whether they were uniformed personnel or civilians. I knew there was a better way of doing it. So that was the goal, really, was to try and move the needle on preventative wellness rather than the reactionary element that we did in our job.
Nice. That's interesting. And I did read that on your site. I read a little bit about you. So it was interesting that going into, being a firefighter in terms of even how it started and figuring that it's not just, dying by fire that caused problems.
Yeah,
as a
no,
firefighter, but
exactly.
there are many other variables to it that is probably not highlighted at the beginning until you're in it, you're doing it, and you're realizing that, hey, these are other things that are taking place that really nobody tells you about when you're starting it, more than, hey, you can probably die in a fire.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's the thing. The fires really, we train a lot for the fires, and they're still very dangerous. But most fire departments now run about 90% EMS, the medical stuff, and then you obviously have the car accidents and a lot of the other things that we respond to. But you get to see the day-to-day stuff that's taking most of the lives, and it's not, as you said, the falling through a roof in a fire or the building collapsing. It's heart disease and
Yes,
overdoses and all these things that are plaguing everyone. But
everyone.
when you're wearing the badge, as you said, a lot of people feel like they don't get to say that they're struggling, and
True,
even the
true.
shift work really does affect the physical health of a lot of these first responders, which is why sadly you see a lot of overweight people in law enforcement, in EMS and fire, and then doctors and nurses too. So yeah, it was very eye-opening when I
Yes, it
finally
is.
kind of had that realization.
It definitely is. I want you to tell us about the first responders' wellness, because you spoke a little bit about that too, and how important it is for first responders to have, the capability of having that medium that they can talk about it or talk about their health.
Yeah, so I mean, really, firstly, from a performance point of view, if your family, is in a fire, is God forbid, your child is in a school that's being attacked by someone, first and foremost, as a performance element, you want your responder to be physically fit, and you want them to be mentally resilient so they can, perform whatever task is needed. But when we ask these men and women to, kiss their husbands or wives and then children, goodbye as they walk out wearing a uniform, as a society, as a community, we also want to take care of them and make sure that they have, a long career, that they're safe, that they don't make any mistakes that obviously results in, a civilian losing their life.
Mm-hmm.
And then hopefully they retire and get to earn the fruits of their labor. So there's two sides to the coin, and they're both equally valid. One is that we perform at the highest level and that we do save as many lives as we can, and the other side is that we foster longevity in these men and women that serve, so that they can have a fruitful life themselves. And I think that there's a facade of almost like the superhero, when it comes to police, fire, EMS, where we believe we're impervious. We're kind of taught to believe that you're the one running towards gunfire when everyone else is running away or running into
Mm-hmm.
fire, but we're just people that happen to wear that uniform. And I think certain people are cut from a certain cloth when it comes to the ability and their upbringing that's kind of set them up for success in that. But if you forget about the fact that you're just a human being, and sleep deprivation will affect you, and trouble at home will affect you, and the things that we see will affect you, and sometimes mistakes that we make will affect you. If you don't acknowledge those and discuss those, and if needed seek treatment for those, then it's a very, very dangerous kind of myth to buy into.
Right. Understood. You touched on early death after retirement, PTSD, depression. Can you tell us a bit about what causes these things?
Yeah. So, well, what's very scary, and I think a lot of people realize this. If you think about an academy of first responders, let's say firefighters, and they're standing on the drill ground their first day, you would imagine, and this is true, a group of very fit men and women, a group of mentally tough men and women. But actually, the first responder community, the majority actually pass away within 5 years of retirement, and usually they can retire around 55. So to take some of the what should be the fittest, healthiest people and the other side of their career, they're dying a lot younger than civilians that didn't go through all that stress and
Hmm,
sleep loss. That's a terrifying
it
statistic.
is.
So, and there are a number of factors, but I think the shift work. So even if you just bring in dispatchers, they're not fighting fire, but my last department, we lost two of them in the last
Wow.
year. One was a young woman. I think she was barely 30.
Jesus.
So, but again, you've got stress, you've got shift work, you've got, not seeing daylight and fresh air. I mean, all these different elements. When people say thank you for your service, obviously we're envisioning, or, that you went into that fire, that you went into that school. But the real sacrifice, in my opinion, is not only the responder, but their families, is just the constant wear and tear on these men and women with these shifts, and the health implications. It does wear them down, and that's why that group of very fit young women and men that you see in that drill ground 10 years later, sadly, a lot of our responders have kind of been pulled away from that fit responder that they used to be.
I mean, hearing you say it, it's really sad. You're expecting after retirement that you're going to enjoy and relax, but to hear that after retirement, because of the wear and tear that has happened over the years, people die. It's not good. Like, how can that narrative change, though?
So I think, honestly, because there are a lot of people that still do well despite that profession. I think a lot of them are people that really understood the wellness elements. When they go home, they do get their rest and recovery, they do exercise, they do eat well. But there's a lot of narrative recently, for example, of defunding. And I understand with some of the cases where that came from, and when there's an unacceptable loss through a mistake, then that absolutely needs to be rectified. But what I see is already a lack of funding, a lack of staffing. So these people are, overworked. Let's take law enforcement, for example. If I was a police officer, I would want to be in a car with two of us so that when we
Right.
go on scene, there's extra pair of hands, and hopefully you can, mitigate any situation without having to, use any lethal force. Or
Right.
so then you add the sleep deprivation element. You've got people that are very, very tired. That's when mistakes are made as well. So I
Mm.
truly believe that if we really understood the cost of what it's like to be a police officer, to be a firefighter, and that we gave those men and women more rest and recovery between their shifts, I
Yes.
think we would make a huge dent, not only in their own longevity, their health, but also on some of the things that we've seen, some of these mistakes that have been made. Because sleep deprivation is used as a torture device, it's used as an interrogation device, and yet some of these responders are flying through our cities with lights and sirens because and they haven't slept for a day, 2 days, 3 days, because they're so short staffed. And it shouldn't be the case, but they are, that they've been told you can't go home, you have to stay another shift. So to me, to make all this better, you have to invest more, and you also look at what are the things that are plaguing us as a community. I mean, what I saw, for example, with addiction, what I saw with obesity, these are areas that I think as an entire nation that we can improve. It pains me that someone is driven into illicit drugs and ends up homeless when that was
Wow.
once a kindergartner.
Wow.
So I think
Yeah.
there's many elements, I think, but yeah, right now we need to give these men and women more training, and then
Yes.
also more time to recover, so that when they come back, they are fresh and they're able to do their job properly.
Understood. And I mean, it goes in line with support. How does support from family and friends and even co-workers play a part of this?
It's very, very important. But on the flip side of that, there's a lot of pressure on the families. So we also have to support the families themselves. An interesting kind of perspective is if you think of the volunteer firefighters. So those families are in their home, and the husband or the wife, whoever it is that works as a firefighter, the pager will go off, and they'll get up and they'll run out the
Leave.
house.
Mhm.
So, and they don't know if their partner or husband or wife is going to come home again. So
Wow.
that whole family, I think we need to support. But yes, understanding and educating the families on what the responder is required to do, what we do find ourselves seeing out there, and giving space between when we get off shift and when we come home, because that's a big, big thing. I mean, I've had calls where, let's say, I'm pulling a time out of my head now, but say 6 a.m., I've had some
Mm-hmm.
horrendous death, and then
Wow.
7:30 or 8 o'clock, I'm walking through my family's door, so
Oh,
that's a hard thing. And then if I'm told, hold the baby, the dog pooped on the carpet, and I've got an irate wife, it's not her
yeah,
fault,
it's not,
it's not my
no.
fault, but the mix of the two is not a
Yes,
not a good
not a good thing at
recipe.
all.
No, exactly.
Oh my goodness. How important do you think it is for persons to protect their communities to get counseling?
I think so. It's interesting. I've been doing the podcast for 5 years, and
Mm-hmm.
about 2 years in, I think it was, there's a guy, Jake Clark, who has an organization called Save a Warrior. And he really opened my eyes on the childhood trauma element, specifically of military and first responders, and how many are drawn into our professions. So if you
Right,
think about, let's say you were abused as a child, there's an element, a subconscious element, that you want to be the protector. You want that
right.
to stop. And so you see that a lot, and it was amazing. And subsequent years, I realized, yes, this is absolutely a common denominator. So I think counseling is important, but even more so, it's what are we doing when these men and women, first walk through the door before they even put the uniform on? Are we addressing what's happened to them up to this point?
Wow.
Because a lot of, and this obviously extends far outside, the responder community, but a lot of people walking around in our communities have had some pretty horrific things happen when they were younger, and it might be, it might be traumatic from a very obvious way, or it
Yes.
might be something being the middle child, or being, fostered, or whatever it is, and feeling abandoned or not loved. They all have the same implications. So I would
Yes.
love to see, firstly, rather than a psych test, which I had over and over again, which is smoke and mirrors and checking boxes, really, that we
Yes.
actually counsel our new responders. So
Okay.
that way they also have a relationship with that counselor that they can then carry on through
Right.
their career,
With
but
your
also offload some of the, it might be anger, it might be frustration, it might be, depression, anxiety. So the more we can address that at the beginning, the same way as we do all this physical training, I think that would pay dividends as we go through our career.
What has changed your perspective on being behind the shield?
I have been amazed, firstly, how much trust people have put into this project. So, getting, yeah, I know in your description of the podcast, you talk about the safe space. Well, that's kind of what I see as well. So,
Okay.
getting that someone to bravely take off that mask of masculinity, femininity, whatever it is,
Yes,
that
yes,
that facade.
yes.
It's amazing how colorful people's lives are, and so, as I mentioned before, tapping into the human being, not the profession, has
Mm,
been absolutely eye-opening. And there's a lot of what I talk about is addressing problems, so it might sound kind of doom and gloom, but it's not. But there is a lot of pain in people's lives, whether it's actual physical pain from injuries, whether it's mental trauma. And so when I really was able to hear all these stories and people really opened up of what was going on, I realized that the human experience is, it's irrelevant if you wear a badge, it's irrelevant if you wear a uniform or, a white coat. We're all going through the same thing. And there are
right.
people out there that have incredible solutions to it. And the more that we discuss it, the more we tear down this facade. There's so many vicious circles in life. Like I said, I personally, this is my own opinion, I think the prohibition of drugs has created so many problems in this country.
Yes.
And we lock up people with mental health issues, which I think is disgusting. So breaking, the more people that we have that talk about their addictions, they might be a Navy SEAL, they might be a police officer, they might be a physician. The more we can realize that we're just people, and the solutions are altruistic. What is the kind thing to do? Whatever religion you subscribe from,
Right.
what would that prophet want to do back in their time? So yeah, looking behind the shield, as it were, I got to see all these human beings. Some were the most elite war fighters on the planet, some incredible healers, but they all are going through the same experience. And I think that's something that we got to understand. There's so much division, especially this last year or so,
Right.
and it's the commonalities we got to understand that pulls us together.
Understood. All right. So even before we wrap up, I want to just say, I think what you're doing is, I think you're doing something really great. You're highlighting different persons. It doesn't matter what they do, as long as, they're behind the shield or they have this badge wearing, because the truth is that many of us really don't know. We don't know what they're going through. We don't know what you're going through at all, some of us, because we have never been in that space or we have never had that experience before. So when we hear normally about persons behind the shield or, people with badges, we think about, well, they need to do better. Oh, well, we put certain expectations on them that for them, we don't even think about they have a family that's going through certain things. And they're human beings just like the rest of us. So, I mean, you had said sometimes it may sound doom and gloom. I mean, listening to it, some people may get that from it, but from it, I get, wow, that these things are very new, but yet still they are very true. And I mean, it's experiences that we can gain, we can understand, or have a better understanding of what persons are going through just by this podcast. I really think that you're doing an awesome job with it.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, like I said, that for me, I know that there's amazing people out there that have solutions to so many of the problems. I mean, mental health alone, anywhere from some of the psychotherapy drugs that they have that have worked very, very well, all the way through to EMDR and equine therapy and all these things. There are solutions to people's problems, but
Yes.
the more I think that we're kind of distracted by the white noise.
Yes.
And like I said, kind of kept apart from each other, the longer this is going to be an issue. So for me, bringing all these people together and realizing, I've got almost 560 episodes out now.
Yes. Yes.
There's
on
all,
that.
thank you. But there's all these common denominators that stick out. And it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, they're the same thing. If you've had things happen in your early life and it pays forward, it might manifest in you achieving high levels, but then suffering behind the scenes. It might manifest in you finding yourself in a gang, and then in prison. It might manifest in, homelessness, whatever it is. But we all started, like I said, as children, as
Yes.
innocent blank canvases.
Yes.
And I truly believe that 99.999% of the time, it's what happens to us that really sends us down that road. So
Yes, it is.
Hearing these perspectives, it just, to me, it kind of reprograms. We get these very soundbite, clickbait kind of news stories from the left and the right in certainly in this country, but the human beings in our community, they're not pigeonholed like that. We're all very, very similar. So yeah, the more stories I hear, the more I realize we've got so much in common, and we truly can make a difference in the physical health. We can make a difference in the mental health and the spiritual health. But listening to conversations like this, your podcast and some of the others are out there with just two people are having a conversation and being vulnerable. And I think it's absolutely, essential, and especially these days.
It is. It is. Thank you so very much. We want to know where we can find you and where can people listen to your podcast.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so the podcast is called Behind the Shield. You can find it pretty much in anywhere that you listen to, music and or podcasts. So iTunes and Spotify and all those places. And then the website is jamesgeering.com. And then I'm on all the social media, but the Instagram is the best one, which is Behind the Shield 911.
All right. Awesome. I want to thank you so much for being a part of today's show. I really enjoyed it, because education is key no matter where you're from, no matter what you're about. So thank you so much for being on the podcast. And thank you so much to our listeners for listening in. And we'll be back next week, Tuesday, on the Unfiltered by Jade. Thank you. Bam, bam,